All right, church, go ahead and open to Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Acts chapter 5. Chapter 5. Acts chapter... Chapter 5. What's that? Acts chapter 5. We're going to be in verses 12 through 21. Well, really 21a. It's the first half of 21, but we're going to be in verses 12 through 21. A man by the name of Jim Elliot once said, "An unequivocal commitment to the will of God, let it cost what it may." I'm going to say that again, a little slower. Jim Elliot said, "An unequivocal commitment to the will of God, let it cost what it may." He also said, this same man, Jim Elliot, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose." I'm going to say it again. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep in order to gain what he cannot lose. Jim Elliot was willing to give everything he had in order for the will of God to be done. Jim Elliot was willing to give everything he had so that others may gain what he had, so that others may gain a knowledge and a love and the joy and the gift that is Jesus Christ. In 1956, Jim Elliot was one of 5 men who flew into the jungles of Ecuador to share Christ with the Waodani people. The Waodani were originally called the Aucas, A-U-C-A, Auca, which means basically savage. It was just the term that people used for them. Some people say that the word literally translates naked savage, that they were just the wild people. Come to find out, their real tribe name that they called themselves was the Waodani. The Waodani were a warring tribe. They're known for their killing constantly. At the time these men went in, 6 out of 10 deaths from the tribe were from homicide. Their lives centered around, if you killed somebody, revenge is upon you. The man who killed my father, I would in turn go and kill him. But then the man's son who killed my father would in turn come and kill me because I killed his father. And whole tribes were able to be wiped out because of revenge killings. Jim Elliot and those 5 men all together knew this. One day, after hearing that there was trouble between the Shell Oil Company and these men, that the government eventually told Shell Oil Company, do what you must in order to get in there and get rid of these people if you have to. Hearing this, these men said, these people need to hear. They're unreached. God loves these men just as much as he loves us. And so they tried. The families came together. They had children. They had wives. They had sisters as well who were part of this work, siblings. And so they would go and be strategic. And at first, they knew that the men would probably be pretty hostile. So they were trying to show them that we care. We're compassionate. And so from their plane, they devised a plan to be able to fly around. And a man by the name of Nate Saint would fly his plane in a circle and drop a bucket with gifts in it. The buckets usually had pans or something that was useful to the tribe. And so he dropped the bucket, and as he would circle, the bucket would stay in one spot. And the men were able to take out what was gifted from the plane, from the would-be, as they called it, because they didn't know what a plane was, from the would-be. And then they would take their own gifts, and they'd put it into the bucket. At one time, it's reported that they even got a live parrot up into the would-be. And as these men are exchanging gifts, they're slowly making contact. But they understood at some point they're going to have to make personal contact. They're going to have to actually talk to these people. And so finding a landing strip long enough was actually just a sandbar on the river, long enough to be able to land that plane safely, not softly, but safely. They finally found the spot and landed safely. They made contact with the Waodani. But unfortunately, the Waodani had one person who made lies, who said that the white man tried to harm them. And he went back to his tribe, and men from the tribe came and slaughtered all 5 of those men on that beach. And then tried to cover it up. For days and days and days, the ladies didn't hear contact, and then finally they had heard what happened. But that didn't stop them. The 5 men's sacrifice was not for anything. Eventually, some of the family that they had left behind were able to go back into the forest and make contact with the Waodani, because the Waodani were sick. They didn't have modern medicine. They needed help. They needed something. So they went in and made contact, and eventually, many of them came to know Jesus Christ, including a few of the men who were there who killed those missionaries as they were coming to try and share Christ with them. A man by the name of Minkaye and Kimo and Dewey, all of them were there. All of them had killed. But then they came to know Jesus Christ, and their way of living changed completely. They went from a society that was centered around killing to a society that was centered around life. But what did it take in order for them to get there? It took a sacrifice. It took somebody giving up what they had so that somebody else might experience the love of Jesus Christ. Sometimes we're called to that, to give of our lives. Other times we're called to give of something else. But Jim Elliot's words still stand and should ring true to us. An unequivocal commitment to the will of God. Let it cost what it may. Let it cost what it may. You see, Jim Elliot and the other men not only said, like we learned last week, I surrender all. Remember? I surrender all. Remember that? And we said, you can't say, I surrender all except. These men not only said and believed it, I surrender all, but they knew very well that one day God could end up requiring all, so that others may know about him and his glory will shine. They were willing to and ready to make that sacrifice for the will of God. This is a part of a giving heart. We've been going through, and we'll go through one more week of what it looks like to have a giving heart. We are required to have a giving heart. Remember in John we read that Jesus wants us to love as he first loved us. Jesus made all kinds of sacrifices for us. He sacrificed his time, his effort, and even his life so that we would be made whole. And that's the kind of love that he'll expect from us. And so that takes more than just, I'm willing. It also takes, I'm ready, and I will. Not I should, not I could, not I might when that time comes, but I will when that time comes. Make a sacrifice as part of my giving heart so that others may know about Jesus Christ, so that I may follow Jesus Christ as he has called me to do, so that his glory will shine not only in me, but through me. Does that make sense? Why don't we read together? Acts chapter 5. We're going to read verses 12 through 21. Many signs and wonders were being done among the people there through the hands of the apostles. They were all together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared to join them, but the people spoke well of them. Believers were added to the Lord in increasing numbers, multitudes of both men and women. As a result, they would carry the sick out into the streets and lay them on cots and mats, so that when Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on some of them. In addition, a multitude came together from the towns surrounding Jerusalem, bringing the sick and those who were tormented by the unclean spirits, and they were all healed. Then the high priest rose up, and he and all who were with him, who belonged to the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. So they arrested the apostles and put them into the public jail. But an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail during the night, brought them out, and said, "Go." Notice he didn't ask. He said, he commanded, "Go and stand in the temple and tell the people all about this life." Hearing this, they entered the temple at daybreak and began to teach. The church is once again back on track. Last week we had read about the story of Ananias and Sapphira and how there was division and diversion because of what they had done, and God was protecting the body from that. God was showing them, I will not tolerate this. You must be honest in your giving heart. Remember Ananias and Sapphira, they had sold a plot of land and kept back a portion of it. And the sin wasn't that they kept back a portion of it. The sin was that they lied about it. They could have just been honest. They could have just brought their sacrifice, brought their gift to the Lord, brought their gift so that all may know about Jesus Christ, but instead decided to be selfish and divert from what God had in store. Now the church is back on track. The vision is reestablished. The vision of we are doing this for the glory of God. But yet there's still a little bit of fear. You see, the apostles were performing signs and wonders, but remember it said that people were afraid to associate with them, but yet thought highly of them. So times they're a little tense, is the word I would probably use. You ever get that feeling when you walk into a room and you know somebody's just been arguing, but they stopped the moment you walked in? So it's a little cloudy out there this morning. All right, let's bring up weather, candy, anything other than what was just happening. There's obviously something that's going on. Things are getting tense. Things are getting stressful. And so the people are trying to not associate, but they understand that the work still must continue. And so the apostles, whether or not it's going to cost them time, whether or not it's going to cost them their freedom, whether or not it's going to cost them their lives, are going to continue on. This is not the first time that apostles have been arrested. It is one of the first times that we've read of all of the apostles that were there being arrested. So the first thing, verse 12, we understand the progression of how God moves and how God works when these men make their sacrifice, when these guys sacrifice for the Lord, how he works. And the first thing that has to happen is sacrifice, and then God blesses that sacrifice, right? If I'm willing to give to God, God is going to bless that. God's not going to turn a blind eye. The sacrifice is not for nothing, just like those missionary men. So in verse 12 it says, many signs and wonders were being done among the people through the hands of the apostles. They were all together in Solomon's colonnade. So many signs and wonders. They were all together in one place. That's a sacrifice of time. Time is something very precious to us, isn't it? How many times do you guys find yourself throughout the week saying, I don't have time for that? People who are my age and a little bit younger, you may remember the phrase, ain't nobody got time for that. Okay? There's only a few laughs. That tells me something. But everybody always says, I don't have time for that. I don't know if I can make it to that. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know. And you know what they end up doing? It could be their grandchild's birthday and they're like, I don't got time for that. And then they're home watching TV. That's happened before. I don't got time for that because I need time for me. I don't got time for that because I need time to work on my hobby. I don't have time for that because I need time to, whatever it may be, fill in the blank. You know you've said it when you really could have made time for what God was doing. I had in youth group, there were times that kids would go, I don't have time for that. And then I'd say, well, you don't have time for youth group? What are you doing right now? I'm drawing this thing. And I said, is that a homework project? Well, no. I said, well, let me see it. Oh, that's beautiful. Get over here to youth group. I don't know what you're doing, but get over here to youth group. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for the Lord. But these men not only devoted their time, they devoted their talents and many signs and wonders. It's not that they were these magical beings. It's that God was working through them. And because they made that sacrifice of time, God worked through them and blessed that work. People were coming to know Jesus Christ. The second thing, verse 18. So they arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. You know, that was a short verse. Let's read it again. So they arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. Short verse, big punishment. Anybody here would like to go to jail just right now? You guys aren't into raising your hands on these kind of questions, are you? Nobody wants to just all of a sudden, jail sounds nice right now. I love jail. I love meatloaf that's hard as a rock, or I'm sure it's not like that now, but I love jail. I'd love to go. There was only one man I knew who loved jail so much because his home life was so stinky, and he actually got a free TV in jail. But this is not that kind of jail. This is not free TV jail. This is not you can earn money in jail. My friend who was in prison would tell me, oh yeah, jail's great. I could work in jail and earn snack food and all this kind of stuff. And I had pennies and man, I'd love to go back to jail. This is not that kind of jail. This is like dungeon-like jail. Like you're sitting there really in the big time out thinking about what you've done, possibly even going to your death at some point. You are sitting there. You remember these same people are the ones who got Jesus. These same people are the ones who crucified Jesus. And so when you're sitting in jail, you're giving up your freedoms. Even jail now, if you commit a felony and you go to prison, you give up freedoms, don't you? You give up the right to own a gun. You give up the right to vote. You give up a lot of rights and a lot of your free time. Personal life, everything, you give it up. These men were willing to go through that as long as somebody heard about Jesus Christ. These men were willing to make that sacrifice of their freedom. They were willing to step back and go, I could take advantage of this and just shut my mouth and not go to jail. I could just do that. I could take advantage of the freedom, because you're just as free to not make a choice as you are to make a choice. And these men could have chose not to do that, but they did anyways, because God is much higher than any government that ever would have put them in jail. The third thing is their lives. It's still verse 18 that we use for that, because they were arrested and put into that jail. It's the same kind of jail. It's the same thing that Jesus would have gone through. Remember, Jesus was a Jew. These men were Jews. Now they follow Christ. Christ was crucified for this. He was put in jail and then put on a cross. And these men very well, and many of them eventually did, go through death for Jesus Christ. We understand, as far as we understand from what Scripture tells us, there's only one disciple who really didn't die. He died of old age, and that was John. There's only one. All the rest of them were persecuted unto death. And so for some of us, we think, when that time comes, I think I'll be willing to make that sacrifice if it means life or death. I don't think all of us are ready for that, because I don't think all of us have our eyes on Christ. You see, in each one of these sacrifices, the common thing that these men held was that Jesus Christ will be glorified. It is Jesus Christ plus minus nothing. It is Jesus Christ and Christ alone. It is because of Christ that I now live, and it's because of Christ I'm willing to die. These men all had one thing in common, and that allowed them to make those sacrifices. It was God who lived in them that allowed them to make those sacrifices. And after making those sacrifices, I want to show you the blessings that God brought upon it. It was not for nothing. It was not, I call you to make a sacrifice. I call you to give something up. God is not some old man sitting on a chair up in the sky dictating your life, saying, I want you to go through this because I find it funny. If that's love, I'm not sure I want to follow that. But thankfully, that's not the love that he has. The love he does have is so that all will be able to experience it. All will be able to have his love. All will be able to accept his gift. The Bible tells us that the Lord wishes that no man should die. Jesus Christ came to die for the sins of the world. All means all. So in verse 14, this is how he blesses. Believers were added to the Lord in increasing numbers, multitudes of both men and women. Now that, in reference to men and women, that's trying to explain that this gift was now for all. It wasn't just going through a patriarchal line or anything like that. This is for absolutely everyone, both Jew and Gentile, men and women. This gift is for all. And these men, sacrificing their time, allowed all to know. Because they sacrificed their time, all came to know who were there, who had said yes, who had accepted, who had made that same sacrifice to give up their old life and come to know. The second way that they were blessed is that they weren't stopped from sharing the gospel. So they were blessed in that people came to know Jesus Christ, but they're also blessed that the work continues, that God made a way for the work to continue. If you look in verse 20 and 21, it says, this is what the angel is saying, go and stand in the temple and tell the people all about this life. Verse 21, hearing this, they entered the temple at daybreak and began to teach. God bless them in that I have called you to go and share the gospel. I have called you to go and share my love. And nothing on heaven on earth is going to stop what I have commanded and going to stop my will. I want my children, I want my creation to know me. I want my creation to return to me. Do you remember a few weeks ago when we went through the 3 circles and we talked about God's design and what separated us, what ruined God's design was our sin, and we lived in brokenness. And when God looks at us in our brokenness, he says, I once designed everything to be with me, for me to love you and you to love me, for everything to live in harmony. And my will still stands even if you made a mistake. I want you back. I'm going to do everything I can to get you back. And so here he is. God has made that ultimate sacrifice, sending his one and only Son to die for us, to make a way. And do you think God's going to let a public jail stop him from letting everyone know? Doubt it. I seriously doubt it. And in fact, I have proof that he didn't. He let those men out. He sent his angel to let them out. And those men continued to share. And people continue to come to know Jesus Christ. All because of God. You see, these apostles had a true giving heart for the Lord. And they meant, when they said, I surrender all, they meant it. And out of their honesty for I surrender all, they were willing and ready to make those sacrifices, to truly surrender what it would take for God's glory to shine, for God's will to be done, for all to know. Have you noticed I've said that? If you've been counting, I'm sure it's like 25 times. That all may know, that all may know, that all may know. We're gaining some focus here, guys. Big things are happening here in Dayton. All those people coming to know Christ, all those people wanting to be baptized, you don't think that's big? You don't know the real definition of what the win is, of what the big is, of what the awesomeness is, of what Christ has done in their life. God has taken these same people, and even though, Mac, your life didn't center around killing, a sin is a sin, and Mac's life was changed the minute he came to know Jesus Christ. From death to life, just like these Waodani people. Now, how can we be like these men, like these apostles? What things in our lives must we sacrifice? The typical things that we think of are time. Guys, time is a big one. Do you know how much time people spend on their phones? It's like, if you look at studies, it's like at least 4 to 5 hours a day. That's like half a work day. If you were getting paid for that and you're getting paid $10 an hour, you just made $50 for being on your phone. Time is usually the big thing that people hold on to, that people aren't willing to let go for God. Here's how we get past that. This is going to sound simple. You're going to wonder, man, that's impossible, but bear with me. Ready? Make time. Make time. You know how you make time for everything else? You know how you go, oh, I need to put that down on my calendar? Think about it. Are you giving God the time that he deserves? Are you doing what God has commanded you to do? Or are you not doing it because you don't have time for it? If you pull out your phone, and I have my phone over in my bag over there on silent. But if you pull out your phone, if you have a smartphone, you hold down the home button, or even say, hey, Siri. The minute you say, hey, Siri, make time for God on Monday at 9 a.m., what is Siri going to do for you? Make time for God, 9 a.m., Monday morning. If you guys, like me, sometimes like to use the written calendar, you probably have it with you right now. And if you're thinking, I'm not doing that because I don't have time, pull it out right now. Don't even listen to the next word I say, and write it in. Write it in, because God deserves that. The next thing we need to make sacrifice in our life is our freedom. As I said, you are just as free to make the choice not to take advantage of your freedoms. Paul even talks about that in some of his letters. Of course I'm free to do that, but if it causes somebody else to stumble, I won't take advantage of that freedom. We don't have to take advantage of our freedom. We don't have to sit there and say, well, I'm free, so I can do it, and I'm just going to do it. If it means somebody else is not coming to know Jesus Christ, then I'm going to leave it alone. When I went over to Pakistan and I was sitting there with those people, I had every right to walk up like a typical American in Pakistan and go, I would like a chair. I'm sick of sitting on the ground. And they would have respected that because they're a very respectable culture and gone, oh, well, you're our honored guest. Will you please have the chair? But no. My brother and I chose, we're going to grow out our beards. That's kind of the reason that I have one today. We're going to grow out our beards. We're going to go sit on the floor. We're going to eat spicy food. And we may not sleep for days because there's no AC and we got spicy food sitting in the bottom of our stomach. But we're going to give up those freedoms that we really have so that people may come to know Jesus Christ. It is a choice. And then lastly, your life. And this is not just, sacrificing your life is not just your air and your heartbeat, folks. It's your livelihood, it's your family time, it's your hobby. God blesses you, and this is not a prosperity gospel that if you send him a check for $50, he'll send you a check for $100. But what I'm saying is God blesses the sacrifices that we make. He doesn't want you to neglect your family. But possibly instead of having family game night, he wants you to come and as a family worship him. Does that make sense? Instead of, I'm going to take that job that'll mean that I miss on a Sunday and I can't go and worship together with the body. Or I'm going to take that job that I'm too tired to have a quiet time with God. Or I'm going to take that job that takes absolutely all of my time. Maybe don't take that job. And if you say, God, I might want to stay away from that job because it means I don't get to spend time with you, God's going to bless you and he will make a way for you to have a job that allows you to still be with him, because God's not going to say, yes, I want you to be miserable and take that job and leave me aside. You think somebody who would send their one and only son to die for you is willing to do something like that? I don't think so. Maybe your hobby, maybe whatever it is that you need to give up. Something that's a part of your life that you need to give up so that God's glory will not only shine in you, but will shine through you. These are all possible. This is all possible because I know it sounds impossible. Well, I want to make time, but I can't make time. These are all possible if you're willing to allow God to do his will in your life. If when you say, I surrender all, not only do you surrender all and be honest about it, but say, I surrender all, and Lord, I understand at some point you may require it, and I will give it to you. I will sacrifice it for you, God. Because it's going to change your life. God comes in and he makes you a new creation. God changes your desires and makes it. Our worship team is going to start making their way forward. And as they do, what we're going to be doing up here is we're going to have a time when we're singing, as Ellen's playing and making her way to the piano, and as our team sings for us and with us, we're going to be singing a song. But during this time, what I would like you to do is, if you want to sit where you're at, stand where you're at, I want you to spend time with God. Ask God, what is it in my life that needs to change so that you are the center? So that my eyes are focused on you and you alone. So that not only does your glory shine in me, but through me. So that all can come to know you. So that all can grow in their walk with you. So that all may flip around and be able to do the same for others. And during this time while we're singing, you have an opportunity to come up, and I'd be happy to pray along with you. I'd be happy, we'd all be happy to share in the joy of what Christ has done in your life. This is your opportunity. If you want to come up and accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, maybe you need to get rid of your old life, repent, turn to him. Maybe that's you today and you need to finally follow Christ. Make that sacrifice. Come forward. Do it right where you're at. I don't care. I just want to know. I want to be excited with you. I want to share with you. Maybe you need to sacrifice your nervousness, your comfort zone, and finally follow the Lord in baptism. Tell everyone what Christ has done in your life. Maybe you need to finally settle and say, God, I've been hopping around from different place to place, and I really don't know where I fit in. I don't know how to plug in. I don't know how to have people around me to help me grow in my walk. Maybe you need to finally sacrifice and go, God, I'm done. This is the local church body I choose to be a part of. Maybe that's you. Whatever it may be, I want you to come forward. I'd be happy to pray with you. You can come kneel here at the steps. You can come sit on the chairs. You can stay where you're at. But this is your opportunity to respond and make those sacrifices that God is wanting you to make. Let's stand and sing together. My Jesus, I love thee.